Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Yonit Arthur. I'm an audiologist and coach. You are on The Steady Coach, and today we're going to be talking about your interactions with other people and how they connect to your recovery from chronic dizziness symptoms. One of the most important concepts that we talk about here on my channel is that in order to recover from chronic dizziness symptoms, you ultimately need to help your nervous system feel safe. If you're new to my channel, or you're not new to my channel but need a refresher, I'm going to refer you to the Basics of Neural Circuit Dizziness video in the video description below. So you can learn more about how your brain being in a danger mode state, or in other words, when your nervous system is predicting danger, that is the cause of chronic dizziness symptoms. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on that today, but the conclusion that you probably have reached if you've seen some of this other content is that in order to recover, you have to make your nervous system feel safe. And we've talked on my channel about many different ways of doing that. We've talked about all sorts of techniques related to understanding where your condition is coming from. We've talked about techniques related to physiological stress reduction like breathing techniques. But one big topic, and arguably one of the most important messages of safety that you can get, is that related to your relationships with both other people and yourself. In this video, we're going to be focusing on relationships with other people, and in future content, we're going to talk a little bit more about your relationship with yourself. So a frequent question that I get here on my channel, especially from those of you who have not taken the updated Healing Chronic Dizziness course, so I will link to that in the video description. It is completely free, so absolutely no reason for you not to take it, is why do I even need to think about emotions? Why do I even need to think about my relationships? Why do my past experiences have anything to do with this? What does my personality have anything to do with why I have chronic dizziness symptoms? And I think this video is going to help you understand that a little more clearly. So how do your current relationships and interactions with people who you're not necessarily in relationships with have such a big effect on your recovery? To answer this question, you need to understand the attachment system. So the attachment system is our nervous system's way of learning how to handle core needs, experiences, and feelings. We learn how to relate to these experiences by how our early caregivers respond to them. So the two things we learn about those core needs, emotions, and experiences is number one, if they're safe, and number two, how to integrate and balance them as we get older. For example, if you are a young child and when you're sad and you cry, your parents comfort you, you learn that sadness brings you comfort. It's safe to feel sad, and sadness can be a part of your repertoire as you grow older. If as a young child you get angry and your caregivers respond by shutting down, you learn that anger is not safe, and you don't learn how to integrate anger into your future interactions. When you're a young child and you learn that emotions, experiences, or needs cause a rift between you and your caregivers, you don't have lots of options because your number one priority is to preserve that relationship with them or that attachment with that caregiver. So in this case, you're going to learn what we call defensive strategies. And defensive strategies simply mean that they're ways of coping with those feelings without needing to bring them up to your caregiver. So a defense could be something like just shoving your feelings down, distracting yourself, having a different emotion on top of it that is acceptable, etc. The problem is that you are having these core experiences, emotions, and needs. And as a result, when those core emotions, experiences, and needs come up naturally, as they do in your life, that produces stress inside your system. So to recap, learning early on in life that certain experiences, emotions, or needs are not acceptable, either via your early caregivers or in early childhood through other important figures in your life. This produces both what psychologists will often call unconscious anxiety, but I will often just call internal stress. And it produces defensive behaviors. In other words, things that you have to do to try to keep yourself away from the emotion, which puts additional stress on your system. Examples of defensive strategies that I've called by other names on this channel are things like people-pleasing and perfectionism. Now, I'm not arguing that all perfectionism is completely defensive, but in many cases, when people are very perfectionistic, they're trying to avoid particular feelings, experiences, or needs that they were taught earlier on in their lives that they were not safe to have. Same story for people-pleasing or for being overly conscientious and responsible. So as you see, although we've referred to those things as personality traits here on my channel, in fact, those kinds of very strong traits or those very strong strategies that people are using are usually an attempt to push away a need, experience, or emotion that is not safe to feel for one reason or another. And often the roots of that strategy are in childhood, when a child learned that those experiences were not acceptable. So to summarize, there are 4 ways in which looking at your current relationships is going to influence your danger mode response in your nervous system and therefore your recovery. Number 1, your defensive strategies alone can be increasing your stress. For example, if you do engage in a lot of perfectionism, that puts a lot of extra pressure on yourself that doesn't need to be there. That increases danger mode. Number 2, the very act of having to compensate for emotions that you're not safe to feel or repressing, pushing down feelings, that is a source of stress and danger mode and anxiety. And that can also contribute to danger mode that leads to chronic symptoms. The third is that not getting your needs met in a relationship is a source of stress in and of itself. This can also increase danger mode related to symptoms. And the fourth is one we haven't touched on yet. That is your ability to access your core experiences directly affects your ability to receive support. So it's not just about your ability to communicate your needs or to feel your emotions themselves. It's also going to affect how well you can take in other people's support. In one of the previous interviews that I did about conflict management, that I'm going to link to in the video description below, we talked about a concept called negative attribution bias. And this is just one way in which your receptive capacity can influence how well you can resolve conflicts with other people or take in their caring and compassion. Now again, if we're thinking about safety as the key to recovering from chronic dizziness symptoms, and you need the support from people around you, if they're being supportive and you can't take that in, that is hurting your recovery process. So what do we do about this? This is going to require an honest look at your current relationships. And I would suggest starting with the ones that are the most meaningful to you or the ones that most affect you on a daily basis. So that could be friends and family members, or that could be coworkers and bosses. Your goal is to ultimately feel safe and supported. So that requires you to take a look inside and learn to be more vulnerable with yourself about your own needs, and to be able to communicate them more assertively and more clearly to others. And for many of you, that other person who you're going to need to communicate clearly with is going to be the other party involved. But for those of you who've chosen relationships in which you're in a caregiving or parental role, it may be that you're going to be doing some of this communication to a third party. You really need some way to be honest and transparent with yourself and feel like you're being validated and supported in your feelings, even if the other party isn't going to be able to provide you with the support that you need. So how are you going to do this? Number 1, you're going to start collecting data from yourself. And I have a separate video on how to feel your emotions. I'm going to also refer you to the video description here where I link to the video. And if you're watching this video as part of my course, you're going to need to click YouTube so you can see the video description. You're going to need to learn how to feel your feelings as a way of collecting data. And you're going to start to notice that for each type of feeling, there tends to be a distinct action associated with the feeling. So with anger, for example, that might mean you feel like your boundaries have been crossed and you need to set a boundary. For sadness, you may find that it means that you need comfort or support. And again, that video that I referenced is an excellent reference for you on this, but if you want a much more in-depth look at these emotions and the actions associated with them, I highly recommend the book Loving Like You Mean It by Dr. Ron Frederick. I'll link to the name of that book in the video description as well. So once you have collected some data on your core feelings, experiences, and needs. You're going to start identifying your learned patterns of defenses. So you're going to start to notice, when do I avoid? When do I start shaming myself or criticizing myself? When do I deflect? When do I distract myself with something else? When do I start pleasing people when I feel like I'm under threat? All of those forms of avoidance contribute to danger mode. So just noticing that they're there and creating a little bit of mindful space around those actions is a huge step in making progress towards your recovery. Step number 3, you're going to learn to get closer to those feelings and experience them without going into your defensive strategies as much. So a little bit of defense is just a human thing. We're all doing that sometimes. But the closer you can get to those feelings, particularly in the context of relationships that are adding to your danger mode, the less overall contribution there will be through those aspects that we talked about earlier in this video to your danger mode. And step number 4 is going to be take action on that data. So you're going to find that there's a huge spectrum of options here, and it depends very much on you, your current experiences, and the emotions, needs, or experiences that are involved. In some cases, the only thing that's really needed necessarily is to vent and validate yourself for having feelings. But in other cases, your feelings and your experiences may be sending you some repeated important data points on things that really actionably need to change in a particular relationship. And in my experience working with clients, I have found that for some people, that is a necessary step in their recovery from dizziness. In other words, if they're in a relationship that they're truly unhappy in and in which the other person isn't willing to change or is actively hostile toward that person, it makes recovery a whole lot harder, if not impossible. But again, how are you to know the truth here unless you've gone through the first few steps? So why are we doing all of this? We're trying to expand your receptive capacity. We're trying to lower danger mode by allowing you to access your experiences fully, by dropping the need for so much defensive behavior, which again is very stressful in and of itself. And we're trying to reduce your avoidance altogether, which also reduces danger mode. In increasing your capacity as well, there's more of an opportunity for you to get support and safety from others so that you can fully recover. I hope you found this video useful, and I hope that you can take some action points from here so that you can start to apply them as part of your recovery process. Again, safety is the name of the game here. Making your nervous system feel safe is what helps people recover from chronic dizziness. And this is one aspect of things that I think a lot of people neglect during the recovery process. If you have questions or comments, please drop them below. As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe to my channel. These things all help me reach more people. Take care, everyone. Bye.